Good evening. Welcome to our Theater of the Spoken Word. This is where we talk about the appreciation of the human voice to the extent that we actually do not do what normal people do when they do a play. We actually depend entirely upon the sound of the voice and an occasional costume. Now, we don't have sound systems, so you might want to scrunch in. And please, at this moment, silence your handheld novelty electronic devices. If the person beside you's phone goes off, you are allowed to stand up and point at them. We'll wait. It'll get the best laugh of the show. It'll be great. No, Barb, like she has to put up with, I have pre-show nerves. I'm doing the writing, and she's saying, well, don't you think garbage could go out? And I say, well, it certainly could, but it does not seem to be willing. Otherwise, it would take itself. Okay, but anyway, thank you, spouses and such. Without your support, we would not be able to do this. I would like to thank these fine actors for their spirit and their willingness. But spoken word poetry is that it's meant to be performed for an audience, rather than just read on a page. You can read a poem, but you are going to get so much more out of it. And we get to hear and we get to savor the speaking. Let me read this because it's got so many sexy S sounds in it. We are here to savor the seduction of the speaking human voice. That's just sexy. These folks here have to perform without props, without sets or blocking. They have only their voices, and they use them very well. Please hang around a bit after the show. We will have a question and answer period, and that's always, actually, that's been, but I'm going to have a question for y'all. So stick around for that. My name is William C. Burns, Jr., and I am your humble servant.
The first movement. Sun's coming up. Liquid luminescence pouring through the crack in the world between the earth and the sky. Kind of gets the old ticker pumping, doesn't it? Guess it's time to get this show on the road. The five in all. They all came into the world the usual way, which is to say we have no idea. The professor, lab coat, jotting down notes, a juggernaut of sciences who never gets invited to the cool parties. Sybil, the saint, the fool. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Mrs. Walters.
Archon.
No, I know. Mrs. Walters. Wednesday's child is full of poor Mrs. Walters. Archon, my angel of light. And Raven, ta-da, well,
The hand and heart definition of terms. Your heart is about the size of your fist. You open and close your hand, shaping your chest, squeezing your heart.
Crush, release, crush, release. It flows in, it flows out. The hidden ocean has not lost its tide.
Crush, release, crush, release. Let it surge and whirl. It is your heart beating, the breath of life returning to the fiber of your being.
Silent moments by the campfire. He pauses and considers, lifts a mug of green tea, turns and asks, "What were you feeling when you looked out the window this morning?" "I'm strangely fuzzy, snug, warm with shades of patchouli and nicely tweaked with flavors of dogwood tang. And you? He smiles. His eyes go to the window. Silence. He says, "What are you seeing inside your head?" "I see lovely, sinuous rainbow dragons cavorting, winding, and twining through the currents above the world. And you?" He pauses, considers. Now that they're out, no one will ever be able to get them back in the box. He stares into the embers of the campfire, and I ask, "What are you doing when you relinquish yourself, when you're wind drifting with the currents?" With eyes of fire, he says, "Will you miss me when I'm gone?"
The unruly pet. The heart can be a really, really, really annoying pet. You have to water it, feed it, take it for walks, and it's never really satisfied. But then again, you need the exercise. Exercise is good for your heart. And when it's all snarl with burrs and thorns and bits of leaf, looking at you with those huge chocolate amber puppy eyes, just remember, it's bound to keep you up all night howling at the moon. And if it trips you up, pavement can be real unforgiving.
Primal drum. You cannot escape the primal drum of your heart, of your poetry hidden in your white bread reality construct. Sure, you insure your car, your house, check the windows, bolt the doors, and without a moment's warning, reality runs the stoplight and comes crashing through the intersection. And you're kissing the airbag, thinking, "Damn, I'm gonna be late." And then you realize you could have died. Suddenly you need words to make it all make sense. Poetry enough to get you through.
The heart is no yardstick. The heart is no yardstick. It changes in dimension by the second. The heart is no weather vane. It charts a different wind that runs not the riverbed of reason. Frog and prince, fire and ice, saint and fool. The heart is only constant in change.
You like calculus? Yes, calculus. Now hang on just a moment. If you take the derivative of the equation for distance, you get the equation for velocity. It's the velocity that changes distance. Now, what changes velocity? Acceleration changes velocity, and the derivative of the velocity equation is the equation for acceleration. So we could say the derivative is the thing that changes things. Well, what is the derivative of acceleration? What pushes the gas pedal? Desire. Desire changes everything.
Scene 1, in abstraction. In abstraction, the center holds. Lovers return to salve wounds carelessly inflicted. I drift to the closet and find your sweater, open knit, off-white, peppered with reflexive jet and the huge hood so popular in the 70s. I hold it, stroke it, smell it, hoping against time some atom of its former redolence remains.
Simple truths. Only that? That's all you want? Surely by now you have guessed the most difficult questions are the easiest to ask. Very well, I will tell you what I must. To find the true center, you must walk on the edge. The best place to hide a whisper is in a hurricane. Guilt has never prevented anyone from doing anything wrong.
The problem of the human heart. The problem? Vampire thoughts, brainware viruses, cherished family heirlooms passed on with mother's milk, clever little parasites that infect without killing, bloated ticks of the psyche, secure only in the darkness of ignorance. They bide their time.
To heal a human heart, the cure? Embrace the sun. Swallow the light. It burns away the flesh, but not the heart. Light flows through the rivers of your veins, nourishing, cleansing, healing.
Scene 2, the one I loved. The angel is falling and I can't get under him fast enough. Wings flailing at random, he won't lift a feather to save himself. I scream, despite my pretense of self-control. I see his every movement. Slow motion in my head. Our friends crying in the bathroom.
Sounds like thunder. Looks like rain. Definitely thunder. Remember that thing you do as a kid? Count the seconds between the lightning and the thunder? Still a ways off.
Just a thunder sound effect.
The second movement.
Every now and then, the human heart beats about 40 million times a year. Not bad for a lump of muscle the size of your fist. Let's say you live 70 years. 2,800,000,000 beats, give or take. So, well, just keep in mind, the heart skips a beat every now and then.
Getting to the heart of it. In this and all endeavors.
Hold it! You know, this is the part that makes me crazy. You just start out like that and boom, there it is. Poetry. Not this time, bucko. I'm gonna translate.
Perplexed and inconsolable, I found the hue of the day somehow changed.
I was looking around and thinking there must be something more.
Beneath, within, and beyond all
Hold
things
it!
being
Okay, go on.
beneath, within, and beyond all things, the parna of the sky, the thunder of the sea, pounding the shore, the quiet volcano.
There are 4 chambers in the human heart: love, hate, courage, and fear.
In all things, balance is maintained.
Things have a way of working themselves out. No, I'm not making fun of you. Hey, come back. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry.
Scene 3, discharge. Fire is running the rivers under my skin. I welcome the flame-feathered cloak, the mantle of days. I crave something broken across my hand, something of value, crushed. Ice is running the caverns of my chest. I embrace the absolute zero of the void, the coffer of the nights. I scream in an empty house.
What we lost. This morning was full of thunder. Why this morning? How was it different from any other? We have lost this morning. Through the window, anyone could see the lightning and scraps of cloud whipped like white flags of surrender in a brutal wind. I've lost my handkerchief. The wind drives the waves far up the beach. The wind is in the heart of the storm, and it just keeps pounding. This morning was full of wind. We have lost this morning.
Valence. The weakest attractions in chemistry are collectively known as van der Waals forces. Hence, the reason van der Waal could not remain married for any significant length of time. Unspoken London forces, the weakest of these forces, are caused by momentary fluctuation of electron distribution symmetry in the atoms, or by the sudden onset of an irrational desire for fish and chips. Covalent bond, electrostatic attraction and sharing of valence electrons between two consenting atoms. Ambivalent bond, quasi-attraction of valence electrons between two atoms that just don't seem to care. Ionic bond, attraction resulting from the transfer of charged particles between two consenting atoms. Ironic bond, an attraction between two sarcastic atoms, or one really sarcastic atom and another atom known as the victim. Moronic bonds, well, you know. Nonpolar bonds, bonds occurring anywhere except at the north and south poles. Oxidation can be defined very simply as the addition of oxygen through a chemical process known as burning. Oxymoron, to burn an idiot.
Three chairs. On that blue September day, a day filled with cyan silence, did you ever wonder what was on my mind? Or was that just one more piece of crap you wanted to scrape off your shoe? On that blue September day, sitting in cold steel chairs, pretending to drink tea from azure cups, looking at the street, pretending not to notice the shadow of the other. On that blue September day, I was screaming without a mouth. Why did you have to bring her into it? Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I would just sit there staring at the street like some piece of crap you wanted to scrape off your shoe?
Well, by the look of the sky, it's about noon. The balancing point of the day. Equipoise. I guess some people wish the sun would just stay there, right at the apex. They would like to set their hand against the sky. I'm no better. I just don't want all this to end. I mean, the third movement.
Ruthie's American Dream. This is a quick story that happened in my junior high school. We did not call it middle school, we called it junior high school. A story about a girl named Ruthie in Mrs. Wolfett's English composition class. Come to think of it, it was in that same class that poetry found me one afternoon, but that's an entirely different story. Ruthie went to the front of the room to read aloud her story, despite her reluctance to do so. It was painfully clear that she was extremely unhappy to be there, as was the case for just about everyone in the class. In a quiet, frightened voice, she read a story about happy people living fulfilling lives in a land of fine appliances. It was terrible. There we were after lunch, sweltering in the pre-air-conditioned cinder block, hardwood, floored terrain of middle American education. And this girl was rambling on with a story that had no plot. Needless to say, the teenage boys present were not impressed, but I was confused because as she read, she cried until finally she broke down completely and stumbled back to her desk. I wanted to know why a story about happy people was making a perfectly nice girl cry. So what if her story had no plot? We were in junior high school. No one's story had a plot. Steve, Jeff, Randy were not much help. They just said, "You girls are like that." So I asked my cousin Sharon, and she explained that Ruthie was from Brookside, the orphanage over behind the ballpark. And I realized that Ruthie was not telling a story at all. She was speaking a poem about what she wanted more than anything else in the world. A clean white house in the shiny city of dreams, in the land of fine appliances.
When it rains, I remember your hand on the railing. Why can't I see your face? In dreams, I run after you. On those rare times when I actually snag your arm, a stranger's face turns to me, and I can see your hand on the railing, your footprint in the driveway, leaving. When it rains, oh God, when it rains, and my hands are cold, and my whole body is hungry for you, I remember.
Scene 4, distorted mirrors. My hands rest, empty, clasping each other on the linen tablecloth. A distorted mirror takes a seat. How can you doubt there is life within you? This is the beginning, middle, and end to your question. In that life, in that living, there is now a vast gaping hole right here. See? And this is not wine. It is blood.
Rainy, gray day. I put my heart, hopelessly broken, in a scarlet velvet-lined box and closed the lid, sliding the little bolt into place. I sit by the window, trying to snatch my scattered thoughts from the wind. The wind has such tiny little hands.
New or used? If my heart was a car, I'd trade it in. It seems to be broken most of the time.
The balance of the day, late afternoon, early evening maybe. If it isn't, it will be soon, and you wonder, how have I spent my day? Is there anything I haven't tried? How will I spend the balance of my day? Don't look at me, I just ask the questions. The fourth movement.
Amazing Facts 3. You have been told your nerves are electrical. They are not. Yes, there are electrical signals, but the signals are just the consequence of the way the nerves really work. Your nerves are tubes of membrane with these little ion pumps that pull the sodium out of the core, exchanging it for potassium. It is estimated that 75% of your energy is devoted to just such ion pumps. Now, something stimulates the end of the nerve. The membrane is covered with the pores that snap open, which lets the sodium that is outside in. This sodium triggers the adjacent untriggered pores in the membrane, which causes more pores to open, like dominoes. And once everything is at equilibrium, the pores close up and the pumps kick in again, stacking those dominoes. And this is happening so fast that you can see and hear me.
Celtic throw. Memories. He's standing outside the back door, shivering, eyes so shiny, crying or cold, blushing cheeks, nose runny. At least he has gloves on, and he's smiling. I try to appear stern, which only makes him laugh, and it has been a long time since he's laughed. Laughter light and bright as this fresh fallen snow under a morning sky gone cyan. Blue sky after a month of fog and rain and dreary. Wonder is born under such skies. He says, I have walked this night dry, walked so many nights dry, yet dawn always comes as a surprise. He looks to the woods, and there is a longing in his posture. He says, the birds, they always get it first. I'm out there in the dark, running into trees, and one of them sees the first photon of light, and they go raving crazy. They are a rioting, total ruckus. Is ruckus even a word? I shrug. I say, it is now. He says, the first time I heard the birds do that, I was scared something was wrong. But now, I know they're all just glad to have lived through the night. They get so excited. I go back into the house and retrieve his favorite Celtic throw. He hasn't moved. I drape it across his shoulders, and he leans into its warmth. He turns to me, and that smile is worth 1,000 endless nights. He says, and ever so gradually, the perfect symmetry of a starless night cleaves, divides itself into things. Shadows become objects in the mist. Moments before I could only find things by touch, but with the coming light, and he leans into me. He says, "Thank you." I say, "For what?" He says, "For loving me enough to stand here in the snow wearing your house slippers, and for loving me by not telling me what to do." I sigh. Even in this world of white death, the hope under the snow sings to me. He shares his Celtic throw.
Zine, empty-handed, listening, listening, silence. Empty mind, listening, listening, the wind whispers. Empty heart, listening, listening, silence.
Scene 5, pen and ink. Darkness is dancing on my back. Shadow, darker than shadow, cool. Darkness is the ink. I lift the pen, sketching the moments as they fade and peel away. Having lost the pleasure, I want to hold the pain. At least that is something tangible. I lift the pen. Darkness is the ink. My life is the off-white page peppered with flecks of jet.
Drinking the river Lethe. If you could have asked, "Is it raining in some future place? Or will I suffer the slings and arrows?" and got your answer? If you could lift your hand against the sea, turning back the tide, turning back time. If you could spin the sky backward, rearranging the clouds without a second thought. If you knew a guy who could remove that tattoo, wipe away that memory, would you?
Dusk. We're almost done. When the twilight comes, when the last day is at hand and the storm has passed, the creeks are roaring, the trees now heavy with droplets shiver, releasing the excess water. When the twilight comes, who will hold your hand?
Heart dance. She dances the shape-shifting clouds, twisting through an azure sky, miles above the golden meadow. She dances a deep-down music, undulating to the majestic river song, glacial and strange, swaying to the hiss-whisper of the breeze, playing the grasses quick and sharp, drubbing to the rush, quiver, and snap of all living things, dancing in daylight and darkness. She dances the quick flicker dance of the scarlet maple leaf, sailing the unseen currents of the world.
To reach, perchance to touch. Ones and zeros streaming so clean, so clear. IIR, initiate, interrupt, request. The data stream acquiesces. He remains still, yet adrift in the tidal wave silence crashing down around us. IAP, institute autonomous protocols. Can't tell if the translucent light of his soul has gone out or has been made quiet and small. I pray it still smolders within some crevice of his body. He lifts his hand, a flicker, a gesture, a start.
17th anniversary. The clock whispers 3:47 a.m. He dreams beside me, the softest breathing, the slightest twitch, good REM sleep filled with rich images, fine tea, cool evening breezes, hot fudge sundaes. The seasons whiz past. My heart ebbs and flows in rhythm with his.
The old man and the ribbon. The old man fingers a frazzled ribbon, sniffs it, as though there could be some lingering redolence, even after all this time. In a voice of gravel, he says, I knew when she was in love with me. She said, the poet and the poem, the flesh and the spirit as one. Just an old man in the moonlight, a gentle whisper of continuing passion, the lingering memory of a kiss, a memory like a lily in the twilight, a tiny angel being pulled backward into the future. An old man dancing alone in the moonlight, a gentle murmur of a lingering song. He stirs the dust in the pale light, a shuffling shadow in the twilight, a confused old man stumbling into a future the color of memory. Distant thunder. Every time it rains, thunder in my heart. Rain courses my face. Put your ear here. Can you hear the thunder?
Darkness. When the sun was gone from the sky on that first day, no one knew it would come. They saw the quenching of the sun and knew it would not return. They knew it. They knew. In their dismay, one brave soul looked to the sky and saw wonder anew. No one had anticipated stars.
Strange attractors. He moves a ghost in the mist, an echo, a thought, better left to the forgotten world of dreams. Desire. Desire splits the perfect symmetry, dividing the universe into day and night, left and right, fire and ice, opposites that attract. I lift my hand, open it, releasing my grip on the moment he has noticed my regard. Embracing the ritual of seasons, I became an inverted flower, opening inward, growing to and from the center. We dance.
The reason aliens sometimes visit the barn. I know there ain't no aliens, son. It's just something I do. You know, to keep your grandma alert. She thinks she's taking care of me. Me seeing them aliens gives her a reason for living. Besides, I'm having one dandy time scaring the sweet bejesus out of everybody.
Scene 6, passage. I find a cobweb, an echo lingering in this corner. I see me lusting to touch you, to know your disease, to drink down your needle pain, to make it my own. But I couldn't. You knew that, didn't you? I kindle a fire in the fireplace and at length reflect the hissing and flickering light, soft and warm on my soul. Velvet shadows dance in the arms of phoenix fire across amber hardwood floors. I lean forward into the slipstream, reaching.
Transit. Well, the sun is setting, falling through the crack in the world, turning on its silent lathe. Night, day, night, day, night. And this is part of the balance of all things. The heart is balance, but the heart is not still. Fini.
Weren't they great? I mean, you know, it's one thing to write something, but when you can get people actually like read it and you know, it's literally as though I custom wrote every one of those for them personally, so it's quite amazing. At this point, I will start out the question and answer period, but I like I said, I'm going to ask a question first. And the question is, was this poetry? If so, why do you say so? Didn't know there was going to be a quiz. Did you?
I wish I knew. It's the first time I've been intrigued enough to think about maybe doing poetry.
Introduce yourself.
Yay! I'm Jay Roberts, and
Jay Roberts has had some classes
a lot
with
of
him.
different writing classes together, so. And I did not know my phone was in the pocket of his jacket. I'm so sorry.
That was not why I was picking on you guys.
And it didn't even sound like thunder.
Mary's got one that sounds like a dog barking, right?
It's a duck.
A
It's
duck.
a duck
You
quacking.
got the duck, and then Francine has the
Barking
the
dog.
barking dog.
Yeah,
Okay,
Gail
I'm
too.
sorry. That's right. Yeah.
My phone placed my school alma mater on a kazoo. That is not what I was going to say. Yeah, there's some beautiful passages and sentences I would like to acknowledge.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
How long did it take you to write it? And did you write parts of it for something and then another part, and then they just kind of fit together?
Essentially what this was is, I write every day,
Right?
and it's very irritating. In fact, I used to, you know, when my sons were like real small and they'd run through the house, stuff like that, I would notice that anytime I sat down to write, a crisis would happen. And one time I sat down, now she's laughing because, you know, one time I sat down and I wasn't going to write, and damn, the crisis didn't happen again. It was me sitting down that seemed to be the trigger for the crisis.
Don't
But
you just think crisis kind of follows Bill?
crisis actually runs from Bill.
It just always kind of strikes that way. You can kind of see it sort of fluttering along.
If a man's got to have what do you call the familiar? I think mine would be like a
I hallucinate
floating
a
ball.
lot.
Do what?
I hallucinate a lot.
Yes. But do you know that there's, and this is probably going to be the subject of my next play, is with artificial intelligence, they get what's called artificial intelligence hallucinations. So you know, you were doing this even before computer augmentation. So yeah.
That's true. There wasn't much intelligence involved in my hallucinations.
Okay, I am here to say that that's bullshit, and we'll move on.
And in answer to your question, I think it's more like poetic basketry because it had a fullness to it and it had a volume because of all the different voices coming in and weaving in and out. But I would say it certainly is poetic.
Very, very good. Thank you.
The readers were so good.
To any of the performers that want to answer this question, for the parts that you read, was there a particular passage that was very difficult for you to grasp and to do it well? Or were there any passages for you personally that just flowed very easily? And I know this may send us back to the script, but that's okay as far as I'm.
Could we ask every one of them and start with MJ?
Yes. Yes, there was one in particular that I really enjoyed because it made me laugh.
You
It
have
was-
some very funny bits.
Yes, if I can find it. Yeah, valence, when he, was one of them, when he talks about the covalent bond, the ambivalent bond, the ionic bond, the ironic bond, moronic bond, etc. And the professor is, to my way of thinking, is talking down a little bit to people, too. And giving you all these incredible formulas and expecting you to understand them and remember them.
You could tell you were enjoying that.
To put some of the background about it, and not to mansplain, although I do that, she was a librarian. And in one of her many careers, she was actually in charge of the library when I was working as a department head for the EET department at Greenville Tech. And I actually remember going over and sitting down and we were picking out the books. She doesn't remember that. Because she did it with everybody, but she was fabulous at it. Karen, I'm sorry.
As short as it was, new and used, I found to be hit home. My character is not very tolerant of poetry. She likes things, tell it like it is. So to say that she had a car that was breaking down most of the times, that she should get rid of it.
Trade it in.
Traded in. So it's been life lately, actually. So. So.
I think one of my favorite parts was when I finally realized what we were doing, the argument that Archon had with Sybil, the back and the forth. I didn't understand it at first, and once I did, then we had a lot of fun with it.
Uh-huh. The poem I loved was The Celtic Throw.
Oh my
It just was such a touching story about, the end of a life, and it just hit home.
I've got, let me interject, I've also got to say, when she does American Dream, now I've actually done that in a couple of shows, but that is literally the case. It was Steve Sneed, Jeff Knapp, and what was the three?
Oh, Rick? Steve,
Anyway,
Jeff.
and Sharon is literally my cousin, and Ruthie was actually a girl. And now, but the one thing no one's ever asked me about that is, there's a line in there that says, poetry found me in that one afternoon, but that's a different story. No one's ever asked me what that other story is. Okay, but, you know, and that literally happened. I'm talking to them, and, you know, like this really, you know, nice girl is just suddenly crying. And she like literally went back to her seat. And, you know, I'm confused because, you know, it was a horrible story about nice people living great lives, and it just went nowhere. Where, if you want to get down to it, this is literally the definition of poetry. It's not a story, it's a snapshot. A story is a movie. This is Ruthie, who was an orphan and who was, you know, a teenager in middle school. She's trying to be a teenage girl. She can't date. She can't pick her clothes. She can't do any of these things. And here I am being Mr. Insensitive saying, well, what's wrong with her? Hell, Bill, if you pay attention. So, Ruthie's American Dream is one of those that I hope that people remember, you know, after I'm gone, because it's the quintessential Bill Burns poem. And there are people who have looked at that very same thing and said, this isn't a poem. It doesn't rhyme. That's why I asked that question, actually. So, this is my Raven.
Yeah, and I feel like Raven is always struggling with the world.
Yeah. Which one did you particularly like, or?
Well, I liked a lot of them, but I think this one's the problem. Vampire thoughts, spring where viruses cherished, family heirlooms passed on, mother's milk. You know, it's just trying to come to terms with what life has been.
Well, I liked your one where you distorted mirrors. I thought that was really.
Yes. That is supposed to be at a wedding.
Which one? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Really?
Yes, and basically what happens, you know, if you look at it, the one distorted mirrors is at a wedding,
Yes.
and the narrator is sitting there with their hands clasped on the table, and a distorted mirror, which is someone who's reflecting them,
Right.
sits down and says, well, here's the problem, you know, this is the beginning and the middle end of your problem. And it's like, no, my problem is, look, there's a hole in my chest, and this isn't wine, this is blood. I'm kind of pulling in that whole Christian thing about the you know, wine and the wafer. Yeah, wine. Yes.
So, to speak to your poetry question, I think of a novel compared to a short story. The short story is more compact, and as a general rule, the reader has to do more of the work. And likewise, between a short story and a poem is more compact, and the reader has to do even more work. And I think that's why poetry, including Shakespeare, including this, your likelihood to grasp it is greater when you hear it said aloud by people who understand the message, understand the story, understand the characters, understand the message.
I just want to get this straight. You just used me and Will Shakespeare in the same sentence.
Yes, sir.
Right? Wow. All right. Thank you.
You're both Bills.
Yeah.
Take a bow, Bill.
No.
Should I have said
Robert
like Bill
Burns,
Shakespeare?
William Shakespeare.
Exactly.
Not that hard.
But in seriousness, I did read.
No, basically, so what you're saying, poetry is when you get one of those cones of ice and you just suck all the juice out the bottom. It's a snow cone. It's the juice in the snow
You might say that
cone.
because you're the poet.
Yeah, well. And I can say whatever I want. Yeah.
Just curious, did you choose your parts after reading the script, or were the parts assigned?
We had an
Assigned.
audition. We had an audition, and that, again, that was something that was you know, there were parts of this that were written for Karen, and she didn't do them because she did the other characters so well, you know, and you know, it's something that's always kind of judged on the fly. And you'll notice that you know, what they said may not have been exactly what was in the script. And basically, you got to understand, the script is a starting point. And I've got to say, for me, I am so pleased you're here, but this is not the moment for me. The moment for me was during dress rehearsal down in the other room, when they went through this one time and we were a show. Watching them, I mean, you know, Gail is actually the biggest one, but watching them say, what is this? Literally.
Yes.
Because, I mean, you know, if I had just handed you that script out on the street and you would have probably gone through the first two of them, you wouldn't, watching them literally own that character, literally take that character from its beginning to its fully evolved form, and that, you know, you can do things for me in my life, but that's worth more than money to me. That's the best.
I was the biggest problem. No.
Please, I misspelled her name incorrectly in the program, by the way. It's C-A-R-Y.
No, it isn't.
I'm
It's
sorry, wait a minute.
C-A-R-E-Y.
C-A-R-E.
One R.
I couldn't
One
get it right when I made the correction.
One R.
One R. Apparently Jim Carrey spells his with two. She's not related to Jim Carrey.
No, I came to audition not realizing this was a poetic play and not really understanding poetry very well. So Bill's been a great help to me.
Well, my question is, are you glad? Are you glad?
Yeah.
She's from the Northeast.
That explains
You
it
can tell.
all.
Yes.
I collect quotes, and Joyce Carol Oates said a couple of things about poetry. One is, when I was reading, poetry is compression, she says. And the other thing she said is, poetry is the soul's shorthand, Morse code.
I think it's just, you know, like I grew up listening to rock and roll radio, WKZ in Charleston. When you're in West Virginia, the hills, you're electromagnetically as well as economically depressed. And so, like, you know, like you don't always get the radio, and you know, we had a thing where we would play the game of title and artist and lyrics. And so you had to be able, you know, when I was a teenager, you have to learn to be able to sing the whole song and everything. Like, this was the time when the Beatles were really big. This was a time when, you know, rock and roll was basically starting out in that kind of pre-innocent stage, where it was, you know, Elvis and all those sorts of guys and everything like that. And I dealt with people who were good people, but they were rough. And they spoke very angrily to each other and everything like that. And I would get kind of lost in, you know, television and stuff like that. And I don't believe that I speak with very much of I sound a little more Midwestern than West Virginian. And it's the love of the language I just adore. Like, I went to see MJ in Driving Miss Daisy, by the way, Miss Daisy. But it's one of the best shows I've ever seen, and I've seen a few. But
It was such an honor.
but
It's a
you
beautiful
know,
show if you ever get to see it.
the lilt,
See it.
I honestly don't know, and I'm someone who reads poetry. I don't think I get a poem nearly as well until I hear it,
I think so.
which is, I believe, what Carrie was saying. You know, it is the actual interaction and the catch of the phrase, and that puts, you know, people will read my stuff and they say, well, how am I supposed to read this? And I say, what's it saying to you? And then they go through that incredibly difficult process of dealing with a man who writes way too many consonants. I've been told, Germans ain't got nothing on me when it comes to my writing. But let me say the thing about compression. There are times when I just literally will just take something that can be said in 2 words and make it a paragraph, because I love the sound of the voice wrapped around that.
But you're still not writing the entire, you're still not painting the entire story. You still leave work for the
Sure.
reader, for the listener, for the audience. You still leave work for them. And
Right.
if you think about many, many, many novels and pretty much every movie, there's not much work to be done. You know, you're watching, you're enjoying the work's being done for you. Poetry requires a lot of work, and I really appreciate all of you helping me not have to do as much work as I do.
So I will cast you if you're not careful.
I do have one more a question for you, Bill. So clearly the balance, it's really, I think, a beautiful balance between the painful, the deep, the lighthearted, and the playful. Is that conscious? Does that come
Oh, absolutely.
naturally?
I tend to follow many of the Eastern philosophies. And one of those is that, you know, like she talks about growing. The Western philosophy, we talk about everything is made, like you're put on a lathe and you're, or a manufacturer, but that's not the way it happens. Basically, you grow. And you grow from the center, you grow out, you grow, and so like when she's talking about the ever inverting flower, that's the moment at which the growth is inward, but it's still infinite inside there. So it's not like it's an ingrown thing that didn't come out. It is a full and growing thing. The idea of balance, but the spin that I'm putting on it all throughout this is it's not balanced all at once. It's only balanced in summation. And so you have moments of joy and you have moments of terror. And to tell someone who's in the middle of a moment of terror, oh, you should be joyful, which is what Distorted Mirrors was about, is just silly. It's not helping. Okay? But then, and to tell them, well, joy is coming, well, yeah, but except that I will feel like this for the rest of my life when you're in the middle of a bad moment. And then you have that joyful moment and you go, damn, I wish I could feel this for the rest of my life. But the thing is that in our existence, we tend to want to put the sun in the top of the sky and hold our hand against the sky and make it stay there. If it was light 24 hours a day, everything would die. If it was dark 24 hours a day, everything will die. Light and dark are balanced, but they're not balanced at the same time.
And in answer to your question, what I was thinking when I said yes, I always, when I got to the part where I have to say, in their dismay, one brave soul looked up to the sky and saw wonder anew. No one had anticipated stars.
Which could be applied
And
to
I
our,
just want to go home after that.
that can be applied to our cultural situation right now. Yeah, it's dark. Look for the stars. It'll be light again. Look for the stars, because the stars will make. Yeah. How can I be afraid of the dark once I've seen stars? Yeah.
I just have one comment. You talked about sucking the stuff out of the snow cone. I think poetry is not so much sucking it out of the snow cone as when the snow cone leaks. All over. I mean, to me,
So that you got to be careful with that. I could go so many ways with that. I'm not going to. So my wife is here. Oh, that's right. She left. I am behaving as though my wife is here. So I'm not allowed to follow up on that.
Knock it over. That was that loud
I
voice.
just, to each of the performers, you helped to lift the words off the page. And you each made your own parts, words, your own, and I saw that. And Carrie, you said you struggled with it. I didn't see that at all. You all did such a tremendous job to bring this off the paper and to make it live. I just thank you. Thank you very much.
Dee, what'd you think?
Excellent.
You knew I was going to put you on the spot. Dee's taking a class with me. She's a member of our writing group.
Ask Joy what she thought.
Joy, what'd you think?
I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Was any one of them your favorite, or did you just?
Well, only because I knew Annette before I came here.
She did a very good Raven. And she was, I have to say that basically when we started this, she's going, you want me to do it how? And then she nails it. Actually, if you really think about it, the two of the characters kind of conflicted. And then others would come in with conflict and stuff like that. I was basically saying the heart is just so weird in that, there can be so many different things going on. And you could feel this and then you realize it's that, and so this was my attempt to and basically I just did a word check and counted the number of times the word heart showed up in poetry, and I pulled that up. Don't think it's too conceived. Basically, my stuff it's like Legos, it all fits together, but it doesn't necessarily